Welcome to This Commerce Life. We are an unscripted podcast dedicated to small businesses and entrepreneurs in the retail and consumer packaged goods space in Canada and the United States.
I'm Phil Chang, co-host and co-founder.
And I'm Kenny Benucci, co-host and co-founder of This Commerce Life.
Our love is the journey to retail, and our passion is sharing that with you every week.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. I just realized my video was off.
It's okay.
It's,
We're all like that. It's like the theme of the pandemic, right? You're on mute. There's something wrong. You can't.
I know. You would think that it would be like nailed down by now, but
no,
not the case.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Not even close to being nailed down. Are you kidding me? I think I'm regressing. I really do. I honestly think I'm regressing. I really do. Completely
It's
gone
possible.
the other way.
Are you still
Oh my
making
God.
homemade wine? Maybe is that part of it? I don't know.
Oh, Alisa, how are you?
Good.
No, I don't make wine anymore. You know what it
I
is?
like
Okay,
her
here, this is
already.
what-
I barely even met her for 30 seconds. I like her already.
Well, it's
He
I'm
stopped
happy for
making
you.
wine because
You
we
know what
drank
happened?
it all. That's why.
Well, yeah, Dinda and probably a couple of you probably did get into that, I'm assuming. You know what
Yeah.
happened? I got gout about, I don't know, 9 years ago, right? So
Yeah.
at that point, like like a bottle every 2 days to like maybe a bottle a month. That's how tragic it is to me. It's very sad.
Okay.
Very sad.
Well, we enjoyed it in our 20s. I think you said to us, if you guys want some wine, and I think you probably were thinking like a little bit of wine, just help yourself. And then that was it. You never say that to 20-year-olds.
Well, the thing is, I'm not that delusional. First off, I was 20 at one time. Two, I know the Favreau family, so let's be serious. And by that point, Daryl Lee had been in the house long enough to know that she was going to be a bit of a disaster. So I was ready for you guys at some point. You know what's funny though? Alisa, we were talking. I was talking to Amelia, and I said, "Hey, do you know how I just invited on the show and this and that?" And
Yeah.
I told her the link that we had known each other. So the story, so everybody who's listening gets it.
Yeah.
I invited Alisa onto the show, not knowing who she was. Like seriously, like no clue, right? Because it does not say "been to Ken's basement."
No.
25 years ago.
I don't think nobody
I
should put that on their LinkedIn. Nobody.
It's probably
If you
not the
have-
smartest thing to do, but that's fine.
I've been to
If
Ken's
you're
basement,
inclined.
and I'm not putting it on my LinkedIn ever. Not ever.
Well, you've been to the new basement. That was the old house. So it's even worse. So anyway, I invite, and then I told Amelia, and she goes, "What's her name?" I said, "It's Alisa." And she said she was at the house, because she knew Dinda, Daryl Lee. Dinda's what the girls, but my godchildren called Daryl Lee. So for years, I still call Dinda. It's not Daryl Lee, it's Dinda. Anyway, because they couldn't say Daryl Lee, Phil. Another story.
Yeah.
But anyway, I mean, I was telling, she remembers you, right? And she's going through, "Oh yeah, they used to be over all the time." All right. So and then I go tell Vanda, who's Elisa's best friend's sister-in-law. And I was going, "Okay, guess who's coming on the show?" And she goes, "Okay, who?" I said, "She's like COO, BC Food and Beverage." She goes, "Alisa." I think like, fuck, how do you guys don't remember this? Like, why am I the only one that doesn't remember anything? So then I went to Paul, and that's where my odds were, because Paul doesn't remember anything either. So it's all good.
Fair. Okay, good. I'm glad it sorted out.
So anyway, that's how. So Phil, so you know the story. That's how I don't remember Alisa. Sorry, Alisa. I don't remember any of the kids
No,
that used
it's
to come
okay.
over because it was a long time ago. But
Too busy
I thought that was
drinking wine.
super funny because I was so excited to have you on because I'm
Yeah,
reading a
yeah.
comment you made on a topic. I'm thinking, shit, she commented. I'm
Wait,
gonna
but
see if she
we're
wants to come
still
on.
excited to have you on. So
Oh, I was thrilled. Yeah, because I don't even know if the story made it not as exciting or more exciting. Made it exciting for Amelia and Vanda. They thought that was really cool.
I thought it was exciting. Laura thought it was cool too.
Yeah, but I don't understand why you guys would think it's cool if you know me. Like, it's not the same. Like, I don't think the wives are excited for me either because they thought it was cool that you came on, not that. Probably because they're talking to Phil. Not I've got nothing to do with that. But,
but the wives aren't. Even my wife isn't that they don't listen to the podcast.
No, I know. Amelia doesn't listen to any of that. Well,
She
Vanda
just gets
and Amelia
excited
might
when
listen to
people
this
she
one.
likes is on the show, right? Like that's kind of how it works. So
That's
They might
how it works
now.
with me
They
too.
might now because I'm on the show, Kenny. So they
Oh,
might.
I'll bet you 50 to 1, 100%. Vanda,
Yeah.
who's probably never listened, and I know Amelia who's listened once because I was in the car with her because she liked one of the people that was on.
yeah.
So the odds are super high that yes, you're getting listened to.
Ooh.
Whew.
There
Then
you go.
I'll put the basement thing on my LinkedIn profile. Then it'll be
no.
official.
You got to put it way
No.
down though, right? Because that's like a long time ago.
No.
Yeah, really
Like
long.
seriously, how long? That's got to be. The kids were were born obviously when Dina was in the house, so
And-
that's got to be like 2000. No, maybe even before that. Late 90s.
Probably.
I don't remember how old the kids
maybe
were.
even prior to that. I don't know. Everything's
'cause
10
my-
years ago for me. So
Yeah, trust me. The older you get, you just really hang on to that number.
yeah.
You just go to 5 years ago, even if you really want to. Makes you feel a little better. Yeah, it's got to be 20. Well, Carly's 25, 26, whatever she is.
Yeah,
And
I
she
was gonna
probably 2 or
say,
3.
yeah,
Yeah, something like that.
hard to believe.
Anyway, that was
Kenny?
6 minutes of absolutely nothing.
No. Actually, it's kind of interesting, but put a bow on it.
Yeah.
So why don't you introduce Alisa while you're at it?
So I sort of already have. So Alisa is now
Survivor
the
of
COO,
Kenny's basement.
Yes.
and Kenny's
And-
homemade wine, which is like a whole different level of wow. But Alisa is the COO of BC Food and Beverage, which is an organization that represents BC food and beverage processors, if I'm not mistaken, and manufacturers.
Yes.
So what we'll do with you, young lady, is as we go through this, you'll let us know about that. But if you want,
Okay.
like who you are, where you came from, what you've done, how you got to here, and then whatever else you want.
Mm.
We don't have to do the basement anymore if you don't want to, because we already took care of that. But
No, well, I think that's a
there's
good
highlights
starting
that I've
point.
missed. I'm good with it. So it's your
was
show
like,
now.
I was
So you drank
born,
some of Kenny's wine, and
then
then
the basement suite.
once the site returned and you weren't blind
Okay,
anymore.
so between birth and about 20, 21, 22, something like that, I'm guessing, 23.
Yeah, they're, oh gosh,
That's so
where to
funny.
start? Where to
Like,
start?
honestly.
I mean, born and raised in East Vancouver. And I linked that actually to being in the food business. I think it kind of gave me my roots. I wasn't expecting it to, but now that I'm in it,
Totally. Right?
yeah, like, I grew up in a working class neighborhood, a ton of people that came from all over the world. I remember having, in Facebook, they used to have those lists of all the different foods of the world that you've tried. And I sort of was like, oh, I'll probably have some on there. And me and my brother both went through the list and we were so high on it. And it wasn't because we had traveled all over. It was because we grew up in East Van. And I used to kind of smell my way around the neighborhood to see who was cooking what, and literally would show up on the door just to be like, oh, what's going on? So I could try all the foods and stay for dinner. And yeah, I don't know. I just sort of feel like I grew up with people that were in the food space in the sense of community. Like it was such
Did
a
you grow up in the
big
war
part.
zone, Laura? Or were you like, where were you?
No, I like 28th. I was up the hill, like right by Windermere.
Okay.
Anybody
because
who's
Phil
listening
stayed
will
at
have
our
no
place. So
idea, but that's
Phil will know now. So Phil, because it's about
I
10
actually
blocks
do.
from where we are right now.
Yeah.
Right? So Phil will know
actually
because he's actually stayed in East Van. So we're making him an East Vanner.
perfect.
I'm a
We're
fan.
making Phil an East Van.
I'm actually a fan. I love it. Like
and for the same reason, loves the restaurants, loves the food.
Yeah. Well, the last time I got even smarter and I stayed right off Commercial Drive. So I could be right by the food.
There's a lot of good food things going on and just good people in the food business. They're kind of my favorite people.
So sorry to interrupt because I just wanted to give Phil
No,
knew
it's okay.
proximity roughly
that's
where
awesome.
you are.
Okay.
Which is just up the street.
Yeah.
So I kind of from there, I mean, gosh, so many years I was in education, started off there, working in the inner city, again, really heavy on the community aspect, went into tech and was in sales and marketing, did that for many years. And I ended up I was working for myself, just sort of started going towards the food business and odd things popping up here and there, and ended up working for a few years with a food processor and really was grateful just to get into the business. And I mean, I got into everything, if there was staff away and we still had production to go through. It was like everybody who was in, working in the office went down there and helped. And it was just, I just fell in love with the business at that time. And then BC Food and Beverage, I was actually a member of theirs and I really liked the organization, and job came up and I thought, like maybe I'll do that. And so I landed there 3 days before we went into lockdown for COVID.
Awesome.
Yeah, so it was an interesting experience because it was, here you are starting a new job, whole new group of people, and then all of a sudden we're in this very vulnerable time with also 450 members who are also in this really precarious time for their business and just feeling vulnerable generally. So I sort of felt like I was dropped in the deep end, and of course figuring out everything on my end as well. And
wow.
Here I am. Just now getting back to, we had our first big live event last week, which was great. That was super cool.
Yeah, we saw it all over LinkedIn. Looked really cool.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I was excited about that. I got to spend a little bit of quality time with Arlene Dickinson, which was like, one of those things a long time ago.
That's
that
pretty
I was
cool.
like, I hope I meet her one day. So I think I just secretly planned this whole event so I could possibly spend time with her, but it worked out. People liked the event. So yeah, I love that. And I love the small and medium business as well. Like it really does. It feels like home to me working in this business, and I care. I cry when places go out of business, and that's just the reality of business.
And that's been quite a bit in the last little while too, which isn't.
Yeah, it's been tough to see, there's a lot of pressures, and it's just sort of when you think, oh, this is it. There's not going to be any more pressure. There's like the next thing that seems to
something
happen.
New.
And the next thing.
Right.
Yeah.
And like
such a resilient.
Something like unprecedented is a word that nobody ever wants to use again, right? Because you're just like, what? And then what?
Yeah.
And then what? And then more? Yeah. Like, oh my God, like,
yeah. It's crazy. It's just been,
crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. And the pivot, it's, I think people are very dizzy probably from the pivot that has gone. It's, circular pivots down at this point. People are resilient though. I have to say, there's a lot of grit in our industry, especially BC, so many small businesses. And they just keep evolving, and it's amazing. The community is so great too. That's what I like. They come together.
The whole food industry is like that. I always tell people that, especially the ones who are retiring. I retire and think, what are you going to do? Oh, I'm going to golf and do this. I'm thinking, you're full of shit. You're never going to be away from this.
No.
It's too nice. First off, in the natural space, especially really cool people. Small business, on the processing side, because most of our processing here is not, it's not for craft and for places like that. It's for small to medium. Again, whole bunch of cool people on all the sides, whether it's in packaging, because I know you've talked to Hayden, who's awesome. And there's just so many really, really nice people.
Yeah.
You know what it reminds you of? Because remember, I grew up in Trail, right? So, which is a suburb of East Van. Then I moved into East Van.
Yeah.
And it feels like the industry, it feels like to me, everybody was born in East Van or Trail. I swear to God, everybody feels that way to me. Just that, you don't know anybody and they're friends within 3 minutes, right?
I get that.
I love that feeling.
It really is. And I do think I really link how I grew up and what I felt like growing up in my community feels the same in the food and beverage industry. And they're just, so many great people and decent, really, really decent people who really care and, care about their employee, care about their communities. And it's nice. And it's sort of, I always wish there was more consumer awareness around it. I mean, I hope we do start to see more and more of that, because I think people, if they knew that about the people making their food, they would support those local ones and look for them a lot more than what they do.
You think that's coming? Because you've only been in this side for a couple of years. Do you see that or feel that, or is that just a hope and a prayer?
I'm an eternal optimist. So I also think I don't know, there's a part of me that, I believe that. I think there's a lot of people that believe that will be sort of pushing the snowplow that way. But I think it's also up to industry to make sure that we're doing that. And of course, we're also in an industry that's very busy, people wearing many hats. It's not enough to put a sticker on something and say, buy local. The people who will notice that and buy it are probably the people that are like me, who
you're converting the converted.
Yeah, and I think
Right.
there is a lot of room though to really teach people. And I know when I was in elementary school as a kid, we used to go on field trips of processing plants to see how things were made. And it made a really big impression on me as a kid. And I remember
Apparently.
being really interested in it. And you know, I think things like that, we have to start young with kids and show them how things are made. And same way we show how things are grown and farming and agriculture. And yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity. So
I
yes,
think,
my answer is I do
yeah.
think it'll change.
And I
Hopefully.
think you're there. Like I think you're
No, I
right.
think it's
Like
coming too.
even in Toronto. So I'm based in Toronto,
Yeah.
and we don't have the same. We do have some local, but you know, geographically we're much more spread out, and so
Yeah.
it allows for, you know, it's a much better place for big companies to, you know, kind of put up chains and things like that. But
Yeah.
during the pandemic, you heard that in every neighborhood that we have, right? Like
Yeah.
we've got all these little, like Little Italy and, you know,
Mhm.
like kind of Upper Toronto, Bayview Village, and you can hear people going, no, I'm going to the local guy, so I'm going to skip,
Yeah.
you know, the big places that can all, I know they can make me food, but these guys,
Yeah.
I'm going to buy from them. And then I had a friend who didn't really ever do that, right? Always wanted to go to chain, and she wound up buying her groceries through her local restaurateur because it helped him with volumes, right? Like she actually got that into it. She was like, okay, so I'm going to buy all my meats from him too because it helps
Yeah.
him with his buy. It makes things cheaper. So me and the entire block got in on the menu thing, so that way he stays in biz. It keeps his costs lower, right? And you're like,
Yeah.
wow, like that is. So I feel like if Toronto can do that, it's a sign that local is coming. You know, that people are, you know, that the awareness is there. Because like if I had to measure the two, Toronto is definitely not a local. We do, some of us do buy local, but a lot of us are in, you know, they're indifferent, right? It's more about convenience, right? So
Yeah. And you know, it's interesting, even the restaurant aspect. I think that actually really helped move that support system, because I know people always have a favorite restaurant. They may not have like one favorite product from a retail perspective. But when they realized that their favorite restaurant was at risk of going out of business, they were like, how can we rally around this restaurant?
Please don't go.
Well, and then we started getting restaurants listing local products because they wanted to help them, because they also had, especially a lot of the, you know, the sort of restaurants that were using, you know, whole and fresh products and local themselves. So they started carrying local products so people could start to pick up groceries there. And I mean, all of a sudden we have a new avenue of retail that's created. You know, and it's kind of, I mean, people, I mean, myself, I'm, you know, I will be lazy if I'm out for dinner and I know I can pick up 5 items that are in my groceries. I will do that because it's there and I'll buy them.
Not?
Yeah. So I think I think we'll start to see more places that sell multiple things in their store. And it's not just, you know, it's more of that enjoyment. And I think sometimes maybe those local products belong there, where, you know, there's a grand opening of in Langley this week, Provisions Market, and it's all locally sourced products, but they'll have food products there plus art products, and you know, it's all different things they'll have there, but it all helps. And when people, they do get into the bigger retailers, then people recognize them, they've tried them, and they'll support them at that point. So I think there's just a lot of avenues that have opened up, which is great.
Yeah, if that's one thing the pandemic did, it definitely helped that side of it, right?
Yeah.
Can I ask, so I want to go back, because you've got such a cool background. The jump from
Like physically behind me right now? Like,
yeah, no, that's cool too. But going from,
focus on
like,
LinkedIn for the moment.
I know. But for going from like a school board to then marketing communications, and then jumping into the BC food and beverage.
Yeah,
they're kind of amazing leaps.
They're a little different, right? I mean, you've done a bunch of different things on this thing.
Like, we're all about the journey. We love these things, all right?
Yeah.
So we're so curious what's going on there, that, you know, clearly you kind of knew where you were going. So I'm just curious.
Did I though? That is the question.
Well, did you though? I was going to ask that too. Are you sure? Because you went.
I feel a lot of pressure now.
Oh, I didn't
explain yourself, Alisa. What is it really?
Maybe I'll just put Kenny on mute for a second. I didn't mean for him to turn that into springing a trap on you. I really was genuinely.
Oh no,
curious.
it's okay. I was agreeing with him too. I was like, wow, this is a lot of pressure that I like had.
He's from East Van. She's fine. Relax. We're not Ontario people.
It all started off, Phil, that I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. So I went to school where my best friend was going to school. That's how it all started. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I had a natural, when I went into education, my dad's retired teacher now, he said to me, don't go into education. It's bureaucratic. Like he wanted me to go into anything else except the school system. I loved the community aspect of school. I don't know, it was all about communication there. And it sort of gave me that foundation, I guess, when I was there. And then I had a friend who was in tech and she said, I really think you should go into sales and marketing. And I was like, well, I can't go into sales and marketing. I don't have a background in that. And the team within the tech sector that where I was going was having some issues on their team behaviorally, I'll say. I don't know how else to put it, but they were interested in my background that I had in education.
Okay.
And basically they were like, we're going to give you a chance and you're going to sort of help out in this area. So that was not a very fancy way to get into it, but it got me in there.
That's cool.
But marketing
acceptable.
was communications and sales was too. It was communications and it was community. And that sort of has just been the thread all the way through. When I had my son, I worked for myself just because I had to and needed that flexibility. And then, I started writing when I was at home and bored and needed something to do. My brain, I'm a constant learn. Like I just learn. I like whatever it is. I just like feed. I'm a bit of a Cliff Clave in that way. I have a lot of random knowledge that I think is interesting, but not everybody else. And then it just sort of grew, and it's just sort of, they sort of don't match, but they totally match. They've all had that thread of, communication, community, and just.
Yeah, but that makes sense to me. That actually does. Like that's
we'll tease you, but that does make total
interesting.
sense.
Yeah.
It makes total sense. I mean, to tell you the truth, like even when we're hiring, like, and Phil's probably done it too, but if I'm looking at people for sales roles and they have no sales experience, but they do have an English degree, which I know people think, really? Yeah, because speaking English in Canada is not the worst thing you could be doing, writing and speaking. If they come from education, why? Because they've had to corral 30 cats. Or 25 cats or whatever. And there. So it's a whole different perspective, right? Yeah. It's a good thing to have as a base where you can learn the sales. I mean, there are naturally gifted sales. You saw Jake this past weekend. Like Jake is like on fire, wired 247, right?
Yes. Yeah.
But he's not everybody's a natural salesman. He's like a natural force of energy. So you just buy it because he shows up.
Well, you'll buy into him.
It's like he just compels your hand to go, I'll take it. Like, I don't know why. I'll just take it.
I don't know where I'm
going. I'm so excited. I don't know why. I'll take it.
Well, they have that natural belief, right? Like at the end of the day, like people, they want to believe in something. They want to have hope. They want to be excited. And when you're around somebody like that is just pure energy. You can't help but love it.
He's exhausting. Yeah. He's so much fun. He's such a good guy, too.
So much fun.
They are. Yeah. It was funny because when I'm around him, I actually go down. Like I start to get caught. I don't know why that is, but
it's called balance.
I love it. Maybe.
That's why you can't have two of you in the room at the same time.
I think it's self-preservation, right? Like, because it's like, no, we're going to just explode, because we'll start both vibing and then just explode. That's it.
Yes. I should say to my grandparents, because this has actually been I started at the basement suite and I should have started earlier. Okay. My grandfather in particular and his family had grocery stores in all through East Van and on like South Granville and things. And so I grew up very much with dinner table conversation about business. And that was probably one of the biggest things that I sort of, and community. And they had stores they were back when retailers were the, standard Vancouver lot community store that sold the basics, and there was one in every neighborhood.
Right.
And going through the Depression, like I heard stories about how, my grandfather, people didn't have money to pay for groceries. So he said to them, no, it's okay. And there was people who did. So it all balanced out and they helped each other. And my grandpa said, when you have the money, you'll come back and you'll still shop here and then you'll help somebody else. And that was very much the way business was done then. And then it was the big box stores came in. I think it was Safeway at the time in BC. And he said, they're going to ruin it all. So he turned it into a real estate holding company and then that was it. But
what do you do?
There was, I mean, it was nice though growing up with that, because that was, his business philosophy. It was ethical and it was good. And he believed in neighborhoods and communities and people. So I think that always is the underpinning of my work. It doesn't really matter what I do. And I quite now at this age, I think regardless of where I go, if it's something I'm passionate about and I believe in, that'll come through regardless of industry.
Right.
You can help people, then it's a great profession at some point. Even if you help one person your entire career, then I think that's a success. So
I love it. It actually makes a ton of sense to
like
me.
a teacher. It's good.
Yeah.
Well, it's true, but it's a good way to go through it. I mean, what's the purpose of this game
really
otherwise?
Yeah.
Try to help some people on the way through.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, really, it's not a long game, right? So
no, and I don't have any special talents, so I just have to help people. That's like my big, my choppy.
That's
background.
a special talent.
that's okay. I get that.
That's
a good talent though, and
It's
not more
yeah.
people should either learn it, or if they have it, exercise with, use it. Don't just hang on to it.
It's nice now being where I am, because I really appreciate, when I was younger, I sort of, I would think, I want a leadership position because I want some sort of convertible car or something, some sort of attainment thing. But I see the value now is that I can help change things, maybe move the needle a little bit in some way. And that's, I think, a real privilege to be able to be in that position.
So can you explain a little bit then? What does BC Food and Beverage do? Tell me, if I'm in a processor of some kind in the province, why would I join? What's the gig?
I think depending on the size of processor you are, might be different for what that is. From a small, majority of our, I'd say probably about 75% of our members right now are in that small to medium category, mostly small, I would say under 30 employees. Often, just as with a business, you're one or two people in the business, multiple hats. You cannot be the expert in everything, and we're not the expert in everything either. I think personally, when I was a member prior, the biggest support was that I could pick up the phone and actually talk to somebody and say, this is what's going on. What do I do? How do I do this? And if we don't have the answers, it's the big network of referrals to people, because there's a ton of amazing supports within this industry as well. And that community. A lot of larger processors, of course, we do a lot of government relations and advocacy work, depending on what's going on for there. I mean, the essential service designation during COVID, we were involved in that, in, getting that for processor workers, which we needed to sort of keep things moving. I mean, tons of different supports. And I think we're pretty entrepreneurial at BC Food and Beverage. So we do pivot as well, according to what's going on in the industry, what the need is. We were talking today about getting some programming to start giving some basically content on recession proofing businesses. Because I think, that's something that everybody, but these are the things when we go in the office. And, I said to James, our CEO, I think we need to get people prepared for this. This is coming. We know it's coming,
right? So buckle up.
Let's see, let's get the content in there and the support for people.
Good for you.
And a lot of that programs, just even we have with WeBC collaborations, we're doing we'll have a female founder mentorship program we're doing in the fall. Really looking at right now, the different sort of segments in our business and who needs support and how. Because it's not the same for everybody with every business. And if you have somebody who's newer to Canada who has just navigating through the government documentation is huge. So how do we support those members? I mean, as a
just English reading government websites is a
I
support unto itself.
Yeah,
Oh,
I had somebody call yesterday who, they're starting up, they have a restaurant, they have a salsa, they want to, start selling it in the farmer's market. And they're like, where do I need to go? And I felt bad actually telling them to go to the CFIA website because they're like, oh, all
Jeez.
the information will be there. And I was like, a lot of information will be there. And
sort
it's
of.
hard for people to navigate
That is
that.
probably one of the
And
worst websites to navigate. Just
it's a,
labeling is pages and pages
it
of
is. And
shit, and you don't even know what you're
yeah,
supposed to be looking at.
but those are a lot of the calls we get, right? And it's just that I'm trying to get through this. I don't know how. And
Mhm.
there's just always things. It's the emergency things too. Like, somebody's doing a delivery too, and it seems like such a small thing, but for a small member, it's big to them. They need a certain type of pallet. And if they do not deliver their products on this pallet to this store, they're getting turned away and getting fined $1,200 or something
Right.
like that. So, it's one of those things. And it's like to be able to call and it's like, hey, we can put it out to the network. Pallet was there in an hour and,
Wow.
crisis averted. But yeah, there's a lot of those things and everybody's different that way. But sort of
Yeah.
80% of the stuff that comes up is the same usually. And then there's that 20%. That's all the little things. So at the end of the day, we care about it. Probably a bad elevator pitch, but I think we try to keep those real relationships with people.
No, but I think that's sort of what you're trying to figure out, right? It's hard. Like
Yeah.
you start doing things in the province or in the country for that matter,
Yeah.
and you don't know the rules and regs and like what is
Yeah.
allowed and not allowed. And
Yeah.
when do you need a nutritional panel and when don't you? And when do you
Yeah.
need to disclose all ingredients and when can you maybe not or whatever
Yeah.
the thing is. So
Yeah.
you were saying like, so of like what are sort of the FAQs that you get so that if someone's listening and in that spot, because I know what happens, someone will sit there for a month or two and just dwell on it and not sleep because they think it's, oh my God, I got to be the only one in the world's got this question, not realizing that is probably on
A super
the FAQ
question.
as way up there as the number 1 in 5 questions to ask.
Yeah. I mean, oh gosh, they're so, we get a ton of people coming, sort of demystifying around co-packing, commissary kitchens, having your own facility, distribution, when's the right time to go to distribution, and then to broker, the fees. That in itself, dealing with large retailers and, pricing is always,
So who do you have to
margins.
do this, Alisa? Like, are they phoning you and your
I
boss? Or do
told
you have a
you,
crew?
I
Like,
told you, I read a lot, so I'm like a walking Google, so it's fine. I have it all. It's all good. We have,
so you're a one-woman
it's
show. Like,
all,
what's
it's
going
all
on?
in here.
What's
Yeah,
going
it's
on?
just-
So, if I phone BC Food and Beverage tomorrow, just for funsies and disguise my voice and start
Yeah.
rattling a ton of questions, you're going to just sit there and answer away for me? Not saying
I
that
might
I
write
would
them
do
down. I'll write
Not
them
saying.
down. I'll be like, this I can, this I can, this I can. We'll have, if we don't have the answer ourselves, we'll refer off to somebody that
Right.
we know has the answers. So that's,
Right.
I think a big part of it that we can.
Which is probably
we'll
why
do
it's
that with-
important if you're small, joining an organization like this is
Yeah.
not the worst spend that you're going to have that month.
No,
Right. It's a valuable resource
it is.
to buy.
And
I'm not trying to sell BC Food and Beverage to anybody, but I actually believe in a lot of these types of organizations because
Yeah.
those FAQs that you think they are FAQs. Seriously, everybody's asking the same questions, guys. And you
It
can go to
is.
people and they'll help you get through most of them.
But I also think, so I'm not selling BC Food and Bev either, but I think, because I think that the role you play, like as you talk, what I hear is, I don't know if we have listeners that belong to BIAs or any of those sort of things, but I feel like those are the roles that kind of those kind of business development groups were supposed to fill in the kind of like a chamber of commerce, right? But
Yeah.
those have turned into money grabs
Or golf sessions or whatever.
or
Right? It's
golf
different.
sessions, or a place where consultants can kind of like fish from a barrel, right? And but what it feels like you're doing is it really is like the kind of this like it's like calling 411, right? It's like I have a problem
Yeah.
and I don't know.
Mhm.
I don't know, right?
I don't know.
All I
That's it.
know
I just
Yeah.
don't
is
know.
that I've got to solve
Yeah.
it, and I don't know who I'm supposed to ask. And when I look at Google, I get 18, kind of like 5 tips on how to do things. Where you're like,
Yeah.
it's not 5 things. I just need one really good
Yeah.
answer, right? Like,
Well, and it's true
yeah.
though. I mean, I think coming from, the background, I was a member, and then, and I was members and have been over the years, a lot of different associations for different
Mhm.
things.
Yeah.
And they all serve different purposes for different reasons. And I think for me with BC Food and Beverage, what I really liked about it, that it was down to earth. It was people that I could phone, I could get a hold of, other organizations that I was a member of, and it was sort of necessary organizations. Like you kind of had to be a
Right.
member
Mhm.
to be in that world. And, I'd get invites to events that would happen that were big and, for networking, things like that. They were good. They were often expensive. But then I would get my renewal notice, and, sometimes I'd reach out to say, hey, can we get help with this? We weren't big enough to get help.
Yeah.
And that's what I kind of like about, with BC Food and Beverage, is that people call and, somebody gets back to them and we try and figure it out. And we do. We sit around. I mean, at the office, something comes up, and often, I'll come in and say, hey, so-and-so has lost their space for processing and they need something immediately. Do you know of anybody? And we'll sit and we'll brainstorm and, we'll figure it out. And it is a great
Seriously?
community.
Who does that?
How cool is that?
I know it's
Wow.
probably like the worst financial model in the world that we do.
I was going to
this
say
with.
it's really not probably based on sound business. Like some
100% not.
why they do.
We
That's
really-
why they do 10 golf tournaments a year, because that's good business.
It is. And I guess for us, like, we're pretty like, our mandate really is to help businesses succeed. And what that looks like is
Imagine that,
helping
eh?
and caring, right? Like, it's yeah, and then we figure out all the money stuff. We like to polish that we're nonprofit, so we can't be too like smart in the business side of things. So
Good Lord.
joking.
I
So-
got it. I
So
figured that.
so this is cool because you jump on to do community stuff, and then what, 2 days or 2 weeks? Was it 2 days later we go into pandemic mode, or 2 weeks after you take the job?
Yeah. So that was just like I just don't even know what, I mean, you kind of knew it was coming, but it was weird because I didn't know these people that I was working with.
Yeah.
And it was just obviously such a strange time. And then also the panic that I'm like, I've just like left a job that I was stable in for a job now that is a nonprofit organization, and,
Yeah.
Reliant on, our events at the time that we were doing. And yeah, so I was like, wow, I hope I don't end up just being like this number that gets lost. And, like I was half expecting to get laid off. And I sort of, everybody, James, our CEO, like immediately had to divert all of his attention to the emergency stuff, which there was much. And the PPE was one of the big ones, because all the PPE supplies were directed to healthcare, which is totally understandable.
Yeah.
But it was also, we needed all the PPE in the processing facilities, and nobody could get PPE. So
Right.
it was like, okay, where are we going? So we became PPE slingers for a little while. We were happy to retire out of that business eventually, but we were able to get it and make it happen. But it was crazy all of a sudden to be in this world where you're like, like, we're a food and beverage association. Like, what are we doing? Like sourcing PPE, but it was a need. And so everybody just kind of stepped up, and it was just quick and getting information out, and it was changing so quickly. That was the other thing. And trying to keep the food systems running during all of that was incredible. I really have so much admiration for the people that were doing that, and especially the production workers. I don't think people realize that at that beginning, that unknown, and it was scary for people. And you can't, anybody who's been in a production facility and all of a sudden they're like, oh, everybody be 6 feet apart. Well, that's not the way production
It doesn't
works.
work.
It doesn't. And, people were scared. And they didn't know what to do. And, it was a really, really hard time for people. And, people kept showing up and doing their jobs and making sure food kept going, even when everybody was panic buying and being all, a little bit not so about that. But yeah, I don't know. It was an interesting introduction to working there, but I just started picking up the phone and emailing people and saying, hey, like, how are you doing? Like, can we help? Like, what's going on? I didn't know what else to do actually, except just start reaching out to people and saying what's going on. Like, how can we help you? And a long, long time ago, when I started out in sales, they had brought in somebody who was the top international salesperson for Apple, and really great guy. But his biggest thing was, talking to people about what keeps them up at night. And he said that will be the root of everything. He said personal life, just knowing what keeps people up at night. And that sort of really came to me during that time. It's like, what's keeping everybody up at night? And what does that look like?
Right.
And can we help one of those things? And just even a little way to help them a little bit, sleep a little bit better at night. And yeah, it was a day at a time. And I don't know, they kept me around. I got a promotion during that. So something must have worked out okay.
You're just a rock star.
I don't know what happened, but it worked out.
Have you noticed, this is sort of leading, I guess, but have you noticed that in our little world or our little industry, because I participate in this one too, and obviously the other side, I'm not paying attention to either of you at this moment. So what I'm getting at is that we went from one frying pan to another, to potentially another, to potentially a couple more that we're not quite too sure what they even look like at this moment. Did you realize, I mean, I know for a fact, I knew prior that we were light in processing in general in the province. Like I already knew that. And to some degree, just because if you wanted to do larger runs, really tough in BC, you could do some small runs for the most part, large runs of whether it's cans, bottles, it didn't really matter. It was tough to find. But once, shit hit the fan and we went through all the stock outs, we were concluding quickly that we don't have a lot of processing in this province. We really don't. And then now that we're running tight on supplies, I mean, again, it's leading, but what's it shown you since you've been in? Like, what are you seeing?
Yeah, I mean, supply chain, obviously, I mean, we knew when COVID hit, there was going to be supply chain issues. Of course, there was a series of, 50 other events that happened that further impacted supply chain. It became interesting though. I mean, I think smaller companies were able to adapt even their recipes and say, we can change this. Whereas our much larger suppliers were often the ones saying, well, no, we can't do that. Like, we can't change this one little ingredient.
Or it'll take 18 months or 24 months to clear by the time it goes through some process.
To go through. And I mean, even going into retailers, like you make packaging changes and that can be a huge issue.
Right.
We went through for lids for a long time. I mean, it's still an issue, but
still an issue.
We're like, and it was like, we can get a lid, but not the lid that it's supposed to be on there. And it's like, okay, like, let's stand back. Like, it's a lid. Like, it's okay if we change it. But we still see that a lot. I hope people can find a little more flexibility with things with food, because it's much more natural for us to have differences in our food and packaging and things like that. But we've become a society where that's so important to us, where it has to look this way and be this way. And, the supply chain issues are going to be around for a long time. The people I feel very bad for are the ones that need a lot of our members they're not the huge volume buyers. They're just getting squeezed out and they can't get the supplies. If their product is 80% oats and somebody else just comes along who has the money and says, well, I'm buying all the oats because there's a shortage, they're the ones who really suffer. And I think, those are ones where we may see more businesses where that's the case with it. There's so many issues with it. And I mean, the floods, of course, the infrastructure that brought on a whole other understanding of, where we could be potentially. But, I listen to my friend group all the time to hear how it impacts them, because I have a different lens on it. And, they're like olive. I remember soy milk was a big one, and everybody was all, they couldn't get their soy creamer. And, it was like the end of the world that they couldn't. I said, well, you could try coconut because that is available. It's like, well, no, I need soy creamer. But that's not really a normal world to live in. And I think, maybe there's a bit of a benefit sometimes to people not having everything they need at all times. It's quite, it's a big first world problem that, we can't get our soy creamer.
Phil and I've talked about that. I think one thing that even retailers learned probably during this mess is that in a 36-foot run in a store, is it really necessary to have 15 brands of pasta and 75 cuts of each brand? Probably not. The world will survive, and your customers will survive too, with probably a good, better, best, and 20 cuts of each, and that's more than enough. Now, if you still want to do 36 feet because you're worried about supply chain, and we all want to eat whatever we want to eat, I'm good with that.
I mean, I think it realigns people maybe to something that's a little more reasonable and real, and
it's more real world, right? The rest of the world, outside of North America, the rest of the world,
fantasy.
You deal with shortages, right? Like no retailer says, I'll have it here for you tomorrow. They just go, we didn't get it. Suck it up, go buy something else, or
right?
We're in a very entitled part of the world, right?
World,
Like, I mean, the three of us are in this mess. I mean, I've worked for two food distributors. We do some food processing. Like, I see everybody work with retailers. But I mean, if I talk to a lot of our friends, say your best friend and, the brother and sister-in-law, who are not necessarily in these fields, they really don't have a clue as to one might because of the industry she's in. The other two are in education. Not that that's a bad thing, not to criticize, but it's not really on the pulse of,
right?
Not on the pulse of, even if I talk to Amelia downstairs, who's, an accountant, they don't really appreciate the fact that it's a bit of a shit show out there at this moment. It's not, and it's not what the media is telling you either necessarily. Like it's the clear picture's a little interesting.
Not so clear.
No. Well, and I remember saying to friends like a while ago, and I said, there's going to be supply chain shortages. And they were like, oh, it'll be fine. Like, and of course now they're starting to see, and it's starting to impact more. And I said, there's going to be increases you're going to start seeing.
Oh, wait, we haven't started, right?
Yeah. And I mean, it's, now I was speaking with a friend and, she said to me, well, she's done a food budget now. And this was new to her. Because all of a sudden, like as we're seeing, and this is where we're getting into recession and fuel prices, everything's costs are going up. But we've lived in our society where it's been more and more and more and bigger and cheaper and more consumption.
Right.
And I don't know that it's really benefited anybody in any meaningful ways. Even our restaurant size of meals, like they've just been getting larger and larger. And there's a part of me, in restaurants, they're either going to increase the prices or lower the quantity size. And
well, you've seen it now.
That's like,
that's happening now.
Lower the size.
And I laughed actually, because I ordered hot wings the other night and I finished them. And there was something in me that was like, it just didn't feel like enough. So then I went back and I counted and there were 7 instead of 10. And I was like, this isn't a bad thing though. Maybe people need smaller portions.
Maybe you know what? Maybe that's all good. Maybe we should just cut back a little bit. But I have noticed a plate of pasta is creeping to 30.
Yeah.
And steaks are now well into the mid 40s.
Yeah.
Like it's starting to, McDonald's now is $15.
Yeah.
It's not cheap anymore, right?
No.
It's not, we'll still function. North America will be the least of the issues on the planet. We'll have people all over this world starving, literally, mass starvation, and we'll still eat and we'll still get our things.
Yeah.
But it's just interesting. I'm just curious to see, like, because you've come from outside of it. Naturally Splendid was one sort of commodity. It wasn't as diverse as what you're dealing with now.
Yeah.
The education system is completely outside of this world. Right. So it is, I'm curious to see, like, I mean, it's got to be a whole different, like, wow to you, where him and I have been stuck in this for 40 plus years. You know what I mean? You've seen it enough times, not as bad as this necessarily, but
the kids and I had a budgeting discussion, because I said to them, listen, we're going to sub out another meal with legumes or beans of some sort. And I said, look, let's do the math together, right? And so we went through the grocery bill, and I kind of showed them, oh, that's not so bad. And I go, okay, good. Now I'm going to show you what the grocery bill looked like. Same grocery bill, you know, because we buy regular things. I'll show you what it looked like 6 months. And they're like, wow, it's so much cheaper. And I go, yeah, yeah. So you see that, so if I buy this is, you know, oh, okay, it's a little more expensive. No, that's a whole meal. So, you know that, you know, Fridays we usually, you know, we skip the dishes, or we'll order local or something. And I said, this is a whole Friday meal. So now we don't do the Friday meal. Yeah. Okay. So if you want to keep that, then now we got to figure out, you know, we got to cut some stuff out.
Something's got to give, right?
Yeah.
And it's not a bad thing, I think, for people to learn.
It's still
that,
a first world conversation, right? Like the rest of the world is not having this conversation. Oh, we're spending a little more money, or we're not ordering out, right? It's not.
I'm buying the steaks at home now, but not buying the steak outside.
Yeah.
Oh wow, good for you.
Good for you. Oh, so much suffering. You know,
like right now, I look at people like, well, people are working, you know, a lot of like minimum wage or just above minimum wage right now. And I mean, you're getting, you know, most of my friends are sort of in that middle class, making good wages, you know, established. They're feeling a pinch right now. And then you look at, like, I always think about like the single mother who's making minimum wage
in our city. Like, can you imagine? Like how?
Like there is no extra. Like there wasn't any.
I don't even think there's enough to get through. Never mind extra. I think you're now playing credit card games or finding ways to.
Yeah.
I don't know how you do it. I really don't. I don't know how you do it.
No, and I think a lot of people just aren't going to be able to. And that's the thing. I mean, when we're looking at, you know, like the food banks and things like that, like how quickly the need is going up there. And it's, you know, it's shocking. But you have to, I mean, at a certain point too, you know, yes, we have to make sure that the food banks and all of those, but where are we making changes that's actually making life affordable for people, and that so they can actually buy their groceries? And, you know, somebody who is working full time should be able to pay their rent and feed themselves and their children.
But you would think the basic thing in our country for sure would be, if I work an honest full-time job, full-time hours, let's say with your partner, spouse, whatever, and yourself, because it's tough one person in our city, you know as well as I do, that ain't gonna happen. So you need two, but two at minimum wage in this city. Rent takes half of the gross, not the net money, the gross money.
Yeah.
You know, before you start, you're dead. I mean, you can't move. Then you want to have a cell phone because you got to communicate, or some nice season. You know, you haven't hit food yet. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know how people do it. And I just don't know.
Yeah. It's worrisome, like watching with everything rising right now, what's happening when there's already those structures that are so stressed, and like what happens then at that point, and how do we, you know, and that's why too, even like, you know, the retail, when I saw that about retail, and it was one of the reasons I was so fired up about it, because it's like, when there's so many people under so much pressure right now, we're not in a regular time where everything's
but they're still charging full listing fees.
Yeah.
They're still fining vendors like crazy when it's really nothing you can do. They're still not allowing you price increases, because you can't include gas, you can't include oil, you can't include shipping, you can't include wages. Well, what the fuck are you going to include in pricing then? Like, what do you want me to? Are we allowed to eat too, or is it just the Galen and the family allowed to eat? Can the rest of us have a dinner too?
Yeah, like
how does this work, right? Well, he pisses me off. I'm sorry, I don't care. I was in retail way too long. It drives me nuts when the attitude seemed to have actually gotten worse.
Yeah,
it's like they left the planet and didn't see the reality of what was behind. Instead, of, like,
that's when you have big consolidation. And when you say like have left the planet, because you've left it from a perspective of seeing what's going on in real life in a lot of ways. And so they kind of have left the planet. Like they're not.
And they're the guys that could help the little guys. Like they could actually help a lot of the processors, because I think, again, one thing we're all going to learn very quickly is if you want to protect your food supply chain, you better do a lot more local.
Oh, absolutely.
And not just local growing and stuff like that, local
Yeah.
processing,
Yep.
whether that's processing
absolutely.
vegetables, meats,
Yeah.
packaging of them. If you
Yeah.
don't control it here, you wait for wheat to come, go from Canada to Italy
Yeah.
because they use our wheat in their pastas too, to
Yeah.
come back.
Yeah.
Shit, you should have skipped the steps and just done it here.
Yeah. And that's actually Arlene Dickinson when she was speaking in our event. That was exactly what she spoke of.
Okay.
And that we have to change that. There you go. You're a visionary. You're just right up
It's not
there.
a visionary. We
Kenny
just
with
happen.
Arlene.
No, we're just doing this way too long is the problem, right? Where you just see the holes.
Yeah. Well, it was exciting actually listening to her because she's really, she's passionate about that in Canada and she really believes in it. And it's actually nice to see somebody who has sort of that notoriety that is a champion for our food, like our entire food across the country and in BC. And it's just nice to hear somebody believing in it like that,
For
saying,
sure.
yeah, I'm actually going to raise money for this. I'm going to invest in this. I'm going to nurture this. And because it's there and it's needed and it's necessary. And it's the basis of what we need. It's a survival need. Like it's not even
food.
Yeah.
Like it's not
like a technology or
it's not a new phone that I really don't need. I really want, but I don't need. A meal is kind of
have it.
Yeah, but that's kind of important at the end of the day.
Yeah, we pick our apples here and then send them somewhere else to get processed, and then
to come back processed. And you're thinking, come on, guys, really?
It's crazy.
Seriously.
I hope we'll see a lot more manufacturing happening.
Well, what I'm hoping is organizations like yours will hopefully assist in doing that. Right? Is that and because you're a nice East Van person, I know you'll do that. That's just bred into sort of East Van and the community aspect of it, right? Is that you got to look out for each other, right? Well, again, you get one kick at the cat, right? When the game's only so long, we don't help each other out now. When are you going to do it?
I don't think we should kick cats, though, Kenny.
It's East Van. It was in vogue years ago. Probably not anymore. I mean, I had a nono who kicked the cat because she was in the garden and tomatoes, tomatoes cat. Tomatoes made it.
In trouble. Now we're in trouble.
I don't kick.
I kind of instigated it though. I
lock things up. I take care of it, Phil. Don't worry.
Oh boy.
I could give you stories though.
On that note, Alisa, we're very, very glad that you joined us.
Thank you. It was fun.
Thanks for coming on. I'm glad that we're done. That's so funny. Really I'm glad the small world aspect was pretty cool.
I know. Yeah. It's funny how that happens. It's like
I'll have to let Vanda know to listen to this too.
I know she'll be like just famous now because you talked about Vanda on here.
Vanda's been on the show. Did I say the last? No, I don't know if I did. No, we can put on the next one. We'll spin it out.
If people want to find you, what's the best way to find you?
I'm looking for something like clever to say there, but I was like, it's just going to probably end up being like inappropriate or something. LinkedIn, great way to connect with me.
Okay,
people want to find me. I don't know.
That's another podcast, folks. We'll do that one later. We'll talk about cats and whatever Alisa was good about cats she was going down. We'll hold on to that.
Getting late for me. I start to get punchy,
It's all good. It's all good.
We love it. Thank you so much. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, and we'll maybe have you back on in the new year. Let's get through this fall, dying to see what happens in our little world in the industry.
Yeah.
Maybe give us
hopefully lots of good things.
I think so. I think, again, you know what? Doom and gloom is kind of what it is. But at the end of the day, you know what? We all seem to get through it. And we'll just have to get...
There's always opportunity in it. There's always...
stronger as a community, too. That's why we start relying and
Yeah.
If any of the listeners or any question you have about food processing, apparently Alisa picks up the phone and answers all of them. Every single Google question.
A little bit.
I heard
that's actually the secret is I Google everything. I'm just a good Googler. That's all.
You're hilarious. I don't think so. I love it. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Lisa. Thanks. Stick around for a bit. Have a nice evening.
Bye.
Bye, Lisa.
Bye.
How cool is that?
No, it's
she's cool.
What's nice is I think you could actually you could actually phone her and just knowing that knowing her, she'd help. Like you're gonna get help. And it's hard out there. It really is.
We should call her with fast thoughts and try.
Oh, she would do fast thoughts.
We should try and stump her though. That would be funny.
So why are you being the mean one now? Like seriously?
No, I'm amused. I actually don't think I would be able to.
I don't
stop
think
her.
you would. I don't think
That's what I love about it, actually, because I think I
Well,
wouldn't be able
you know
to
what?
stop
If you
her. I
think
think it'd
about
be
it,
amazing.
she led us to our first fast thought,
She did.
right? It was sort of down that
Yeah.
spin of, you know, me getting pissed at Loblaws or
Mm.
whoever I was mad at that day,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah. But
I
it's
just find
cool.
it interesting. I do. I
It's
find it
cool
interesting,
to
even her
be
career
able to
path.
talk to someone like her and see
Yeah.
you know, what she's thinking about. So yeah.
Just it was working like to see what she's seen, because you know she came from such different, you know, education is a different industry.
Yeah.
You know, it's just I mean,
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
the segue for me, I don't know if, like, we're at an hour, so I don't know if anyone's still listening, but I guess I think knowing, like, helping us get answers that you need, like, because we've talked about the shortages, we've talked about recession, you know, kind of by the time you hear this, we'll have done a fast thoughts on how you retain employees, you know, and you know, kind of some techniques to figure out how to do that as well. But I think if you have questions on what's coming, ping us with them, and I think Kenny and I will
Absolutely.
definitely try and help you answer them. I think,
or we'll get people on that might be really geared toward it.
So, you know, like, one of the things that I'm reading this week, right? Like, there are a lot of venture capital funds that are kind of telling startups right now to kind of conserve cash because, you know, there won't be any round raises coming. And so you think the implication on the industry is actually pretty significant, right? So you have, like, kind of startups out there that are burning cash. Some of them are retail, some of them are tech, because sometimes when you hear startup, you think tech. But
there's lots of retail,
lots and lots of retail that are burning cash right now to build volume. And if they've got venture capital funds backing them that are now going, listen, you need to slow down for a minute. You need to conserve your cash and make it through the next 2 years. The very next day is going to be layoffs, right? Like, you're going to start seeing companies cut body so that they can conserve some of those funds, right? And that leads us right to the kind of the dreaded R that nobody wants to talk about, right? So,
well,
um,
it sort of fuels it, right? Because again,
It
there might
does,
be listeners
yeah.
who aren't in the industry
yeah,
who don't appreciate or don't know that when Phil says burning cash, they are quite literally, you know, doing that to some degree, in that, you know, they're spending way more than they're bringing in, and a
Yeah.
lot of it's within the hopes.
intentional. It's intentional. Yeah.
Some are for reasons that
Yeah.
probably aren't the wisest, and others are because it's just trying to get to
It's
scale,
the right thing.
trying to
yeah.
get the thing, and it's not the wrong thing to do. But there are a lot of people now. So even if you're venturing into this game, I think it's still a good time, and I think there's lots of opportunity.
Mhm.
But you need to come in understanding that you're probably going to have to fund a bunch of it by yourself. And then what that means is you have to figure out your scope and scale before you start.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
it may not be running to Loblaws and Sobeys and
Mhm.
Save On first. It might be dealing with a lot of the locals and taking it slow,
Mhm.
making sure that the cash is coming in and actually accruing, not just dwindling away.
Yeah, I think if you're in it and you're hoping for a fundraise or you're looking for cash somewhere, it's also
It's going to get tougher.
you got to take note of, right? It might be tougher right now.
I think it's going to be, Phil. I mean,
raise
you can
cash,
say it.
so-
It's going to be tougher because
Yeah.
there's that much more risk coming.
Yeah.
And again, it's not that you want to be doom and gloom, but the reality is,
Mhm.
you know, things are
Yeah.
to play the way they're going to play. They're going to play out the way they play. It's got nothing whether you and I agree
Yeah.
with it, disagree with it. It's going
Yeah.
to play the way it plays.
Correct.
Right. So we are
Yeah.
walking into tougher times, and I think we just need to be all ready for it. But don't stifle the entrepreneurism and don't stifle the innovation. Just be a shit ton more cautious.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But we don't want people to stop doing things, heaven forbid, my
Mhm.
God. And it's
But-
really a mess.
But definitely, like, so I think not to kind of because now we've ended it on a gloomy note, but
no,
I
reach
honestly,
out to us because we got people that we can have on, like
Yeah.
Alisa, who are
Yeah.
who are resources
yeah,
that actually want to help you and see you
Yeah.
grow. And you can grow even in tough times coming up. Big deal.
Yeah. And
Maybe-
so we do
Let's go.
want to help. So
Absolutely.
if you have questions and you're kind of wondering like where can you get answers, like hit us
Ping
up.
us.
You know,
Ping us.
and
We'll
ping
find
us.
the
You
answer
can-
for you, or
you can
connect you with
reach
somebody.
us. We'll put you can find us through the website. You can find us through
We're on LinkedIn,
social
it's easy
media,
peasy.
LinkedIn, like all the time. But if you don't, you can, podcast at thiscommercelife.com and shoot us a note, and then
Absolutely.
we'll do our best to
See what we can do for
help
you.
you sort out whatever the question is. So
Yep.
Yeah. Awesome.
Okay, buddy boy.
Awesome.
Very
That
good.
is it, sir.
That was a very interesting podcast. Enjoyed
Yeah.
that one. Thank you again,
Was.
Alisa. And thank you everybody
Yeah.
for listening. Hopefully you guys all made it to an hour and 5 minutes. I hope.